Now, can you hear me? Is your sound up? Okay. All right. I think we got it okay now, finally. Something's always going on with my lives. Something's always going on for some reason where either the mic doesn't work or the picture doesn't work or the camera not working. It's just one of those things where I feel like it's a setup. Yeah, it's not that one's not showing. So let's try to do this thing without the enemy attempting to mess over me as per usual. At this point, it's just kind of like a running joke. I've come to expect it. And I don't care how early I up, it never ever um, it never works. Something always happens. So I just sent the live out. I'm seeing if Michaela can come and can join. I might wait for a few more people to get in here. Hey, Michaela. Okay, good. Excellent. All right. You guys try to get some more people in here. We're going to do a recap of the space from Twitter Spaces, where we talked about ungodly men and women and how we ended up getting in a situation where these relationships are not functioning according to God's um, prescription. And why is it that we always end up having these types of situations being discussed ad nauseum, on all social media platforms? So take a cursory glance at Instagram, and you'll see that there are, um, men hosting a platform, as I discussed last time, and say, well, see, the reason why men, don't want to get married anymore is because women are not humble, they're not submissive. Listen to men, they want to do everything themselves. They don't want you to open doors to them. They don't want to listen to you and follow you. They kind of want to lead you. And then, of course, we have the added hypersexual, hyper masculinity of women now that think, they can sleep with a bunch of people, because men do, or that, their careers and that they make is somehow going to be attractive to men when it's not. You also have women who think that being told that they should be modest in their dress and in their conduct, how like a throwback. I heard a woman say today, days or something to that effect. There's this belief that modesty is something that is akin to ancient times. That it's a throwback for a specific group of people at a specific time. That it's not a conduct of the heart that displays itself outwardly. Um, and there's also this mindset that women can be and do anything men can do and be, and that somehow God did not make us separate. And if you have a bibliocentric worldview, or you somehow believe that women are created and men are created within a certain order with certain roles, that you're trying to harm and keep them from having liberty, and you're trying to stop them from expressing themselves, and their body belongs to them, and there's this kind of like autonomy where a man, even a man they're married to, has literally no say. And then if you flip to the other side with men, for the most part, prior to women becoming this way, um, believed that women could dress immodestly and that it was sexy, and that women, should um, be able to dress how they wanted as long as it wasn't, their woman. But they would still kind of co-sign on this idea that a woman being sexy was attractive. Now, how did they say this? They didn't verbalize it per se, but they were drawn to it. And so the thing you're drawn to, right, is going to cause you to act in a way that is ungodly and uncharacteristic of what Jesus would have you do. Definitely not a god-fearing man, or a man that is protective of a woman and sees a woman as being someone to guard and to honor and to cherish and what have you. So if you have men chasing these kinds of women yet saying these women are no good, there's a contradiction there, right? Because how can you be with something in the dark that you don't respect in the light? So, and of course, for the most part, we had a lot of um, conflict because men would say, well, I wouldn't want a woman like that for my wife, but I'd sleep with her or I'd smash or whatever. And the thing is, a lot of these men were making babies with these types of women. And these women were, um, becoming single parent households of these shows. I know I'm a product of a single parent household, and you had a lot of anger from women because they were choosing partners, and men too, that they pretty much would not want to actually have a long-term relationship with, but nevertheless they were sleeping with them, making choices that obviously end up in long-term relationships because of the children. Then, of course, you have the state coming in, and the state comes in and says, listen, we're going to take advantage of this disparity happening in this community between these two people. The men are not and doing their part, right? And so we're going to help the women, right? Help the women. And so we will allow you to depend on our system. We will take care of you. We will provide for you. You just can't have your life, right? So we'll give you Section 8, we'll give you food stamps, all that good stuff. But if the man up, then we'll help you. And so, even if the man was kind of laying on the woman or whatever, he could not be an actual resident to that home, and he could pay child support. That's what he could do, but he couldn't actually be in the child's life consistently. So you had women that were kind of taking this as a win of some sort, because for them it was a boon to be able to get the financial support without having to deal with the father of the child. Yet they would argue that the father needs to be in the child's life. I know, because I experienced this. I remember my mom trying to get me to call my dad when it was like, how many years passed? I was probably like 11 or 12. And I only like saw this man when I was 2 or 3. Like, call him and tell him that, we need money and he owes, in the rears of child support, which is a horrible thing to do to your child. And my father was just like, what? Like, I don't even know you. Right. So, you're my child, but I've not talked to you. I've not talked to her. Like, and he knew that she put me up to it. Cause like, what 11-year-old kid is just like, I think I need to probably call my dad and ask for child support. So it creates a lot of hatred and animosity. And listen, as much as I can understand where men are coming from, when I see women today who were a lot like I was when I was younger, very angry, vitriolic, bitter, believing that men, are not operating the way they should. So they, by default, owe women everything. And excuse me, we don't have to actually be participants in trying to make the relationship better. We just have to be the benefactors of whatever they can provide, but we don't have to listen to them. We don't have to change how we conduct ourselves, how we dress, none of that. I owe you nothing. You owe me everything. I can understand how that can bring a lot of anger, rightfully so. But the flip side of that is, you can't put the cart before the horse, right? Because the cart isn't driving on its own, it's being led, it's being drugged somewhere. And so I would argue that the horse has pretty much just dropped the cart, if not dangle it on one cord altogether and shouting back at it, why are you following me that way? Why are you bumping and knocking into everything, right? Even though it doesn't have the proper, um, what do you call it? The proper, I'll just say, connection to the horse and the harness in order for it to be pulled properly. So, I mean, my issue with all of this on both sides is that this is kind of like talking about race, and it's like talking about religion, in that it's beneficial to people who don't really want to see answers happen. They don't want to really see change, real change, because talking about the problem and the symptoms of the problem over and over and over is why there's so much frustration and anger. Like, when I see men and women talking, it's kind of put on as like entertainment for us now, right? It's supposed to be hilarious when a woman, gets a snap back at a man and says something that, for that culture seems profound, and all the women are like, yeah, exactly, take that, whatever. And then, same thing in reverse. If a man says something, and I've seen these ridiculous shows on IG where, a man says something that's supposed to be, really good to kind of get in your face at the woman. And then a man will stand up and go, oh my God, and act like something deep was said. And these are things that we all know, the things they're saying. These are not like, deep things that nobody heard of. But it's almost like a snapback. It's like, who can get the other person, tit for tat type of thing. So there, to me, there's not really an interest in like resolving this. And it's the same thing with race, right? There's not an interest in resolving race relations. How do I know that? Well, because if I talk to another Black person, right? Black person about how we're not victims of the system. We're victims of ourselves, right? For whatever you want to discuss that happened in the past, presently, if we really believe that the government, has done some horrible things to us and they're perpetuating over and over again, seems to me that would be the group of people that would say, you know what, we're sick of the government doing this to us, and we don't want to be beholden to them and their programs and any of their other nonsense politically. So we're going to take matters into our own hands and we're going to resolve what we can, boots on the ground. How do we do that? Well, let's start with the kids. Let's look at what the kids are producing. They are a product of their home life for the most part. And so let's start looking at what is in their home life. What's happening between the mother and the father, if the father's in the home, that's creating this type of anger and frustration and disrespect for authority. There's something going on in the home that is perpetuating this thing, and it's going on for generations and generations, right? Because I'm 50 and I can tell you, when I was being raised by my grandmother, a lot of the stuff that I see happening now, I wouldn't be alive if I tried with my grandmother. Like, it just wasn't happening. I never even thought to try her. I think I questioned her one time, and she jumped on me, my grandmother, pinned me to the floor and tried to choke me. I can laugh now, but it was not funny when it happened. And I was like, oh my God, this lady is crazy. But she was from the old South, and you don't talk back to your elders. You just, I don't care how wrong they are, you just don't do it. So today, the kind of boldness, right? These young kids are so emboldened, but it's because of the adults. I mean, you can't even blame the kids. It's the adults' fault. The adults are not adulting. So I would look at what's happening, in the home. And then you go, okay, so if that's happening in a home, where's the breakdown between the mom and the dad that creates the breakdown to produce these kids? But no, Black people want to look at what's happening in the government and just point to the government and try to change politics and change programs. They always want to do everything on the peripheral. And I believe a good majority of that is because if you actually get to the roots of the problem, something can change, right? Something can actually change. There's effective change. And that means that this can't be used anymore. It's not financially expedient to those that want to pimp it out. Well, it's the same thing with men and women. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go to my PowerPoint. So if you see me looking over here, that's what I'm looking at. And my title, as you can see, is the women men don't love and the men women don't respect, because this is based obviously on scripture in Ephesians, where the Lord makes it very clear that you have two people that are supposed to approach the other one in a certain way. Now, why is this mentioned this way? Does it mean that men don't have to respect women? Of course not. Does it mean that women don't have to love men? No. The core principle is based on what the other one has a predisposition to not do. Let me say that again. The core principle in Ephesians discussing men and women is based off of what those men and women are predisposed to not do. It is natural for a woman to love. It's natural for a woman to nurture. It's natural for a woman to be a caretaker. And obviously, I know I'm going to have to do this because I'm on YouTube. We're not talking about the exception. We're not talking about the women that don't love. My mother was not a nurturing person. I am. This is not something that, is across the board true. Primarily, women are the caretakers and the nurturers and the people who can easily give of themselves emotionally. Men are more predisposed to be providers, right? And they sometimes correlate, which there is some truth to that. They correlate their provision as an act of love, and it very much is. However, it's not the end of it. So notice that God forewarns men, love your wives as God loved the church, meaning put her first. Well, of course, this is a slap in the face to what we see in the garden, because Adam didn't put Eve first, right? So he's literally saying the thing that you're predisposed to do, which is to preserve yourself and care about, your reputation and how you look, because men are typically driven by ego, right? I don't want you to do that with your wife. This is the one relationship where you should not be competing with her. She is your first priority. You are to protect her, you are to guide her, and you're to love her. Self sacrificial love. Not just going to work, because let's be fair, most men would go to work if they didn't have a wife. But now you've got to actually consider this other person, right? So men don't lack emotion. It's just that that's not their first primary by default thing they go to. They're logical creatures. That's how God made them, and thank God for it. And of course, God had to tell women, you are to respect your husbands. Why? Well, Eve usurped Adam's respect and thereby God's respect by putting her authority over Adam. Okay, she stepped outside of her God-given role, which was to be a helpmate. And she just, said, forget my mate, I'll help myself to that fruit on that tree. And that's the helpmating she was doing. So I'm going to go ahead, and I can't see the live chat. So Michelle, if you don't mind moderating the 5 people that are probably not in here, that would be great. Of course, I'm making a joke because let me see. Yeah, moderate the 2 people that are in here. Moderate Cindy, Michelle. She might get out of hand. All right. So of course I'm being silly. And let me see. Let me go to my side by side. There we go. Okay. You don't have to moderate, Michelle. You can't moderate. There's nothing to moderate. I'm being a clown. All right. So as I said, the title is the men women don't love, and the women men don't. I'm sorry. I'm crossing my own title up. The women that men don't love, and the men women don't respect. Got it. All right. So you guys pretty much know why I chose the title, right? It's kind of obvious that in modern day society, these are my notes, especially here in the West, the breakdown of men and women's relationships has been talked about ad nauseum. But how did we get here? Whenever you want to know the answer to a question, it's better to try and look for the origins to the answer as best you can. But what I see people doing is discussing the symptoms of the problem. I liken it to an overweight person talking about the foods they eat and the lack of exercise as not possibly corresponding to their problem. So let me just stop here. Thanks, Michael. I'm glad you're back. I had a screw up with my first live. For some reason, I couldn't even get in my own room. And you guys, do me a favor, tweet out the space because tweet out the live because I don't often get a lot of traction in here. And it's typically because there are other spaces and stuff happening in Twitter. But if you guys don't mind sharing it to IG and to Twitter so that people know I actually am in the room, since it kind of messed up the last time. So basically what I'm describing is I'll use myself. When I was overweight and eating poorly, I really never made a correlation to the foods I was eating and the lack of exercise. I really didn't. I knew maybe subconsciously there might be some connection, but I more thought of it like, you know what, let me find a way to still eat the foods I want, but then like exercise it off. And that didn't work. In fact, it was worse. Then I was like, okay, let me find a way to eat the foods I like, but maybe, eat less of them on the weekend. And that didn't work because I didn't understand the science of food and the body. Okay. Cindy, I know, me too, girl. Trust me. I'm new to all this. Like my first time on Twitter is really this year, like actually engaging. So my husband is the one teaching me, training me. Like even while I was going live, he was like fixing my camera. He's like, you got to turn to the side. I'm like, So anyway, I really did not understand why I was having heart arrhythmias and why, I was getting neuropathy in my feet because I was, I guess, becoming pre-diabetic. It was really bad. And then I was tired all the time, and I'm only 5'1". So for me to be huge is horrible for me. My body can't sustain it. It just can't handle it. And there is a history of diabetes in my family. Literally every woman in my family, except for my mother, who's still alive, all died with diabetic complications, which is really sad. And so, I'm a sweet eater. Well, I used to eat a bunch of sugar and I always had snacks by the drawer. But then I'd complain. Like once I got my clothes, I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting fat. I was a size 5 most of my life. Then I went to a size 7 after having kids. Now I'm in 12, 13. Like, oh my God, I'm having to buy bigger clothes. And it was uncomfortable to sit down driving because, all my gut would be hanging around. It was just uncomfortable. I felt like I was in a body sack, like the ones they use for movies to make a person like they're huge. And I could not do a lot because I got tired so fast. But I never thought I need to change the way I'm eating. Like I didn't want to do that. And the situation with men and women is very similar. We often want to kind of like deal with the symptoms, but we don't want to ask ourselves how we got here. Okay. So we know that eating right and exercising is important. Yes, it is. In fact, eating right is 100% of the problem. Exercise is just kind of like an addition that helps, right? But you could not exercise for a long time and eat right and lose weight and change a lot of your health issues. Okay. But what led the person to using food as a crutch, right? That's where you start learning how to deal with the problem at its root. And then the symptoms kind of start going away on their own. So for me, I started with intermittent fasting and I went from 2 hours to 4 to 6 to 8 to now I literally fast 16 hours a day, except on Saturday because it's the Sabbath. So I don't force myself to fast, it's just delayed eating. Lost a lot of weight, got back into my 7-8 clothes, feel really good, and I'm still working on myself. But now I lift weights, I exercise. But I first, I had to look at what are you doing that's creating this problem? What are you doing? Maybe you need to change. Cindy said, okay, Michelle, moderate me. Yeah, moderator, get her. She's being too sweet and kind and loving. We don't tolerate that here. Um, if you start looking at the root cause, there's something interesting that happens. One of the things that I saw happen was I became very angry because I started thinking, my family taught me to eat this way. This is what they knew. I wasn't angry at them, but I was angry that something so beneficial to my health could have been learned years ago. And I probably wouldn't have to deal with all of this inflammation and problems. And then I wouldn't have taught my children to eat that way. Thank God I've reversed all of that for them and us. Like there's no white sugar in my house. I don't cook any of that stuff. I don't use white flour. And Michelle was at my house. She can tell you I made the best keto jambalaya with cauliflower rice. And she could tell you I made keto cornbread. It tastes like cake. And she was like, this is bomb. So I got somebody that could testify to my cooking. But if you have no knowledge of how you got somewhere, you typically are left with just fighting against the symptoms. And this never works because if you don't know how you got somewhere, then the root begins to just push forth a really nasty, ugly plant. And you don't really ever crop it off at the root so it can stop producing the same outcome. You just keep trying to stare at the outcome going, oh my God, please, 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 I got to change this. So you go run and you go walk but then you're coming back and you're eating, ding dongs. It's like your mind has to change. This is the same thing with men and women, right? Our minds have to change. We need to know what is the origin that led us to this vitriolic hatred. Men and women are actually at odds with each other. I love you too, Cindy. Mwah. What is it that caused men and women to see each other as the other or as the perpetrator of evil? I mean, this wasn't the case before. And all of this feminism and racism and this elemental peace stuff, it's funny because hey, Kevin, I'm so glad you're here, brother. I know you don't get to jump in often. All of this nasty stuff that has come in between men and women is literally because we don't know the origin story of how God intended men and women to be with each other and to interact with each other. And so everything is upside down. Oh, you were talking about the food, Cindy? That's how it is? Okay, I got you. So, what led the person to using food in this abusive way? What led the person to living a sedentary life or believing that what they ate over years' time would not catch up with them or affect them physically? And I believe that wrong belief is the cause of the symptoms in male and female relationships, just like it is with food, right? Hey, today, how are you? Hey, Ariel. Okay, yeah, we talked earlier. I'm so glad you came in, girl. And thank you. I appreciate you guys share the live out. I keep wanting to call it a space. I'm on Twitter too much. Share this out and get some people in here so we can have good conversation. All right. So if what I believe about men is wrong, if my paradigm of what a man is, his purpose, his function is from the world, from my bad experiences, if it's from any of that, guess how I'm going to deal with men? I'm going to deal with them in a way that's clearly contrary to the word of God. If I say a man is supposed to do A, B, and C, and A, B, and C doesn't line up with the word, then what I have is a cultural misunderstanding, right? A familial misunderstanding, an experiential misunderstanding as to what the purpose and function of a man is. The purpose and function of a man is not for my benefit. It is first and foremost to God. And so, if a man is operating and functioning in his role according to what God says about him, then he can only carry this over. It's like a trickle down effect. Remember when you read in scripture how they would pour the oil to a priest and it said the oil would run down all the way down his beard, right to his feet? Why is that? This was an anointing. He was being covered in this. Okay. This oil represented anointing and God's putting his hand on him. Well, I believe that when a man functions in his role, his God given role as husband, father, priest of the house, there's a anointing that trickles down over to his bride. However, if I, as a woman, do not see a man created in the image and likeness of God, okay, that's the first way I have to see him. See, my husband, he is my husband, but he's my husband because he is first God's son, right? So if I remove God from the picture, what do I have? I have my definition, the world's definition, my experiential knowledge, which is little to none with men in my household because it was all women. It was very feminist, women led, women talking all the time, women handing down the rules. I never saw an interaction between men and women. I didn't even know what marriage looked like, honestly, ever until I got married. So imagine if you have that ideology, how are you going to treat that man? You're going to treat the man like he is par and parcel, directing everything towards you alone. Excuse me, and how you think he ought to navigate that and that alone. So now, if there's a breakdown in that, or if I feel, excuse me, if I feel that that man is not operating according to what I have conditioned myself to believe or been conditioned to believe how he should function, I'm going to want to leave, divorce him, have an affair, all these things. Why? Because he's not operating the way I think he should. However, if I know that God has already conditioned how a man should behave and conduct and act and all of that, I'm going to be, as a helpmate, looking for him to operate in that role. Now, if I'm operating in my role because of that trickle down effect, I get to, as a helpmate in a godly way, help my husband, hold him accountable to that word. See the difference? I'm not holding him accountable to my word. I'm holding him accountable to God's word. So if he ever steps outside his function, I could say, wait, hold up, honey. That's not godly or that's not biblical. And then even if he chooses to disregard what I'm saying, God, right, being what anchors us together, can hold him accountable and go, excuse me, son, you're out of line. But if I'm holding him accountable to my definition of what a husband ought to be, he can go whichever direction he wants because I can't hold him accountable. I don't have a law or a word. I didn't create him in my image. I'm going to have a limited function, right, as to how he can conduct himself because I'm a created being myself and then I'm made for him. All right. So wrong belief, we agree, causes a lot of the symptoms in male and female relationships that are bad. Okay. If what we think about each other is not coming from the origin of the manufacturer, right? We talked about this last time. If you take a plant out of its soil, it's going to die. It's going to die. So you've got to keep it in its soil. Notice that, and I have tons of plants. Notice that if you don't water and take care of the soil, you'll notice that the soil begins to dry up and it kind of shrinks away from the roots. And then all of a sudden, you start seeing the yellowing of the leaves. And then the leaves start dropping and the plant shrivels up and dies. Now, some of them, you can give some nutrients and water, and you got to doctor the plant, but you've got to keep it in its soil. Sometimes you have to add more soil. And then you'll notice that the plant starts to become invigorated. You might have to put it in the sun for a little bit, and it has life. The soil, the origins of its food has to be restored. This is the same thing for men and women. Men are connected to the soil. They are the roots, so to speak, in the soil. And then women are kind of like, the chlorophyll, they kind of help to invigorate or bring life or kind of bring some type of stimulant to that plant. But the soil has to be intact. And if men are not rooted in that soil, right, then the women or the leaves die, right? If there's no nutrients coming to those leaves. What I see happening is men are making excuses for not being connected to the soil because they're like, I'm checking out. The leaves just keep complaining. The leaves keep on dying off, and it's not my fault. They're not participating. So they're not acknowledging that they have something to do with this. And the women are like, I don't even need the soil. Deuces. I'm going to go find some other soil to sit in. And of course, that soil is not pH, it's not acclimated, you're right, to their being able to thrive and grow. So, yeah, you have a plant, but it's got gnats and fleas, and it's producing all kind of a gross smell. It's got soil that's not being treated properly. So, it's trying to produce these offshoots of some other plant, and it's just a mess. And what men and women are doing is just going like this to each other, but nobody wants to take responsibility for their part. And that's because we're not connected to the manufacturer. The manufacturer made men. The manufacturer produced women from men. Every single instance of a poorly functioning relationship is going to be tied to God not being the head every single time. It's kind of like when we talk about slavery. Anytime you see, and I'm not just talking about blacks, anytime you see slavery happening historically or biblically, first thing you're going to notice is people became disconnected from their source. They turned away from God. They started worshiping idols, right? And because they started worshiping idols, they started thinking, you know what? I can do this in another way. I don't really need the true and living God. I can kind of have my own version of God. And men and women are doing the same thing. I can have my own version of what God said. And is it working? No, it is not. It's a hot, stanky mess. Or as Cindy said, same smell. Yeah, mess, gross. Okay. If what we understand about each other is coming from a wrong paradigm, then the only outcome is for us to treat each other incorrectly. Absolutely. Those are my notes. I'm reading them like they're not, but they're my notes. All right. So I did I wish I could like share this with you, but I don't think I can because it's on a what you call it, on a slide. Can I share this? Let's see. Can I link to it? I'm trying, guys. My God, I need to take like courses in technology. Okay, let's see. Copy. I'm trying to copy it and see if I can put it in the chat. Yes, I did. Okay. So I think you guys can click on that and you can see my notes. Okay. All right. Ian, Joy. Hey, Ian. Good to see you. I didn't see you in last week's Bible study, did I? You must have been busy, but it's good to see you now. All right. So I created that's all right. You're right on time. I'm only into the next slide. And I think I put a link up there. I think you guys can click on there and read the notes with me if you're so inclined. All right. So I created a little comparison chart for myself called Adam, Eve, Then, Now, and Tomorrow. So I'm going to read through the notes that I made. All right. Oh, good. Somebody opened the presentation. Awesome. All right. So Adam reflected God's glory. Okay. So we're talking about what was in the original of God's plan and then how it changed. Okay. Adam reflected God's glory and image, and there is still a spark of divinity. So what's remained is a spark of divinity in Adam, but what's changed is he's not really reflecting God's glory. Okay, awesome. I'm glad you guys can see it. Good. All right, I just taught myself something new. How cool. Even a ninth grader can do it, guys. All right. Adam was to tend and guard the garden, right? But what happened? Adam neglected his responsibility and a serpent saw the breach. So for the men, because we're going to get to Eve, women, I'm going to give it to you too. That's okay. You guys don't have to, you guys can, does it cut me out with sound or just my picture? Because if it cuts out just the picture, you don't need to look at this ugly mug. You can just hear my voice, right? As long as we're following the same stuff together. But if it cuts out my voice, you guys can just look at it later if you want. All right. So Adam was not guarding and protecting the garden because clearly Hasatan got in there, right? And he, I believe, took advantage of the fact that Adam was not protecting Eve anymore. And if you guys remember when we went over the scripture last time, I said in the space that he was standing there watching, right? And we're going to actually go back over the scriptures at the end of this. But Adam allowed the serpent to have more authority than him, clearly. So Adam was given authority over the animals and named them. What do we have now? The animals don't respect Adam's authority. We have never seen, at least in my lifetime, so much, let's just say, violence from animals towards mankind. Now, this is definitely a judgment of God. Excuse me. The Bible talks about how the animals will come and take over the land. This is actually something that happened in the plagues. So it's a repeat of that, but it's like ooh, times 10. All right. Number 4. Adam's work was a blessing. Remember, he wasn't working by the sweat of his brow. He was working and using the things that God had already provided for him. So it's pretty easy to just kind of kick back and enjoy it, right? You've got the 4 rivers coming and watering, so irrigating the earth, right? There was gold and all kind of stones, precious stones in the earth. I mean, so you could say Adam was the first wealthy guy because everything was right there. And you had all the trees for food, right? And he was able to eat of every single one. There was nothing off limits except that one tree. And also, you had a type of blissful, carefree, intimate relationship with the Lord because the Bible described Adam as walking in the cool of the day with the Lord. So, this is something I believe is kind of like the habit, it's the norm for them. They don't know anything but this sweet, intimate fellowship with the Father, which is amazing, right? Number 5, Adam was not made to be alone, but look what Adam. Adam put himself first, which has led to his loneliness, right? We have all these stupid terms, incels, betas, right? Why do we have all these terms? Because mankind does not want to accept all of these definitions culturally are only needed because man turned away from God. That's just the reality of it. We don't need all these stupid psycholinguistic terms. We only use them to make ourselves feel better that we suck at obeying God. Right? It's kind of like saying, I have a disease. No, you're an alcoholic. You drink too much. It's not a disease. A disease is something you catch and you didn't want. You're putting the bottle to your lips. You're making this happen, right? So unfortunately, Adam, right, man has become more lonely than ever. And it's crazy, right? Because there's a plethora of women. Women are like throwing themselves at men. I mean, okay, find us on OnlyFans and you have to pay to get it. But I'm just saying, women are like just out there everywhere. But men are more lonely. Why? Because women don't feel like they need men. So what's the point of having a lot of women around and they're going out of their way to be super attractive, but not for men, more as a competition for each other and against drag performers, which they're more increasingly starting to look like. YouTube, don't strike me. That was a joke. All right. Then it says, number 6, Adam was to never eat of the forbidden tree. What happened after that? Adam is a slave to everything forbidden. You guys see that? Adam was to have authority over everything. He named the animals. He did all these things. He had position of dominion. And what did he do? He became a slave to the thing he was once dominating. Because that's how it happens. If you choose to not serve God and the things that God gave you are to serve you, you begin serving them. Okay. Number 7, Adam was to continue the line of the human species. What did Adam do? He has become the supporter of the destruction of the human species. He's actually saying, go ahead and abort the baby. I can't take care of it. I had a man tell me, and this isn't to in any way malign him because he was saying a true thing. He said, look, you women are the gatekeepers of sex. And I said, yeah, but you don't have to turn the key in every gate, right? So you still have control. You still have control over yourself. Women could sit on the sidewalk, legs wide open, and say, come and get it. And you still have the right to go, no, thank you. Which, by the way, if a woman ever does that, please say what I just said. Because if it's given away, it's probably going to be scary. Just saying. All right. Number 8, Adam was to be a covering and a protector for Eve. Adam now exposes and humiliates Eve. If I hear one more man say about women what I hear them say about women, I mean, it's truly disgusting. There are men on Twitter that will take a video or a picture of some, ratchet celebrity who clearly has no respect for herself. But rather than, lament that this is happening, because, men have mothers, men have daughters, men have sisters, men have aunts, and there should be some aspect of that in those ratchet women that you see as a man, right? Because you are the guardian, you are the protector. You don't have to protect and guard all women, but you still should not be going around saying about these horrible women. That's why these hoes, can't get a man. Because okay, but if you're the kind of man that sleeps with these hoes, what does that make you? So I never understood the hypocrisy of criticizing a conduct only to partake in it. And I often use the analogy, and I was just talking to my new friend today, Ariel, and saying, listen, if I believe stealing is real, and I have a conversation with my neighbor and go, my God, the crime is exponentially higher in our neighborhood. And she says, yes, we must do something about it. We have to end this. And then all of a sudden, it's found out my son is the one doing the crime, right? And I go, oh my God, it's my son. He's stealing from all these people. Well, let's try not to be too hard on him. I mean, he he's had a hard life. And then my neighbor goes, yeah, but he's still robbing people. And I go, yeah, try not to say anything about this, okay? Because I mean, I'm gonna talk to him. No, wrong, wrong. Don't call the cops on him. Wait a minute. Last week, you were just willing to call the cops on who you thought was doing this and you didn't know the name. Now it's your son. All of a sudden, you want to kind of lower the bar. You're a little bit more quiet. You don't want to call the cops. So you don't think stealing is as bad as I thought you did, right? And that's what we do here. If you really believe that whole thoughtery ratchetiness, this is my word. And if you guys ever want to learn my vernacular, it's called, you can say it with me, ho thoughtery ratchetiness is what I call it. When women just don't know any better, and because I was all of those things, so that's why I can make a mockery of it. When women don't know any better, they don't do any better. And a lot of this is coming from anger, a lot of this hyperbolic behavior, like I don't care, that they care. Because see, women that don't care don't put videos of themselves saying they don't care. Women that don't care what you think don't constantly try to post videos to see what you think. They had a woman post a video, it was so hilarious on IG, and she's like a fitness model, looked like a black woman, washboard abs, the whole nine. And she's walking across the street with her jacket over her shoulder, and she's like, look, you know how they do these videos where they're looking around with the music, and the voiceover says, I don't care about what you think. I don't care what you think about me. And I thought to myself, the irony. And I posted in the comments, but you do though, because that you're saying you don't care about our opinion, but you posted the video because you knew everybody was going to give their opinion, right? So people are just like really, really funny to me. And of course, you have all the people saying, well, why can't you just congratulate a sister? I don't have time for that nonsense. If I don't care what people think, I typically don't go online to show people stuff so they can say stuff to me so I can get in the comments and be mad and go, I don't care what you think. Of course you do. So men, if you don't like women that conduct themselves, okay, in a fashion that is immoral, that is ghetto, declasse, why would you talk to that woman? And I mean, yes, even in the dead of night, my husband told me he used to date women that he would never bring home, which I know. It's so bad. But he was like, I would take him to the movies. It was dark and I'd take him right home because they were only there for one thing. And that's horrible. But I'm laughing because I know this is how men think. But let me see. Ian said, twerking is the same as casting a spell. Well, I don't know, Ian. There was a psychotherapist the other day that said twerking is a way to release trauma. Go look it up if you think I'm lying. It's on YouTube. She literally said, and she had like these videos, these vines of women twerking. And so as these women are doing this, she's like, it's a type of release of trauma. And I was like, I need release of trauma even listening to you. So if you think that a woman who conducts herself in a way that is displeasing to what you would typically, want to be around, if you wouldn't bring it home to mama, then don't talk to it, right? I said, don't talk to it. Don't talk to her. Don't entertain her. You need to see every woman as a potential mate or mother of your child and just ask yourself, is that someone you'd want to be with for the rest of your life? Is that someone you would want raising your children? If it's not, then she's not worth being with. And also, let me say this, because I know this is going to probably upset some people, not you guys in the room, but other people that may watch it, because you wouldn't believe some of the comments I get. I had a woman tell me, women don't have to deal with the stuff I'm talking about. Everybody doesn't want to be a wife and a mother. Women have careers and blah, blah, blah. And then I went and looked at her picture and looked at her page and I was like, it makes sense why you would say that. Okay, but anyway, not saying she was ugly. She was older, in her 60s, and you could tell she was about, getting the bag and all that. And I'm like, yeah, and that's why you're by yourself. But okay, you're talking to me, a woman's been married 22 years. You can't come teach me anything. Since you got the bag, you'll be 90, and I hope the bag can keep you warm. I hope the bag can say, mama, grandma, we love you. I hope that bag, can kiss your forehead and watch over you when you're sick. I hope the bag can do all that. I don't think it can, but try, please. And then come back in the afterlife and tell us how successful you were. But men need to stop. This is my direct message to men. Men, Ian said, did she have dogs? I was about, okay, Lord, I'm not going to say that. Ian, you're trying to set me up. Stop it. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to be kind. Um, Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's right. Okay, so Shayla, don't buck me up because when we get on the phone, I'll do it. I was just gonna say, okay, fine. I was just gonna say that sometimes people don't need dogs, and that's all I'm gonna say. That's all. You guys can get what you want from that, okay? Because sometimes they're too close to look like mine. Okay, anyway. So when a man says that women have to be pure and chaste, but they think because socially they don't know the word of God. Because Adam had not had a train of women behind him, and then he was finally like, you know what? These other women, they can't be my wife. I can't deal with the false eyelashes, right? I can't deal with that. I can't deal with, the lace front where, the weave is like this and then it falls out or something, right? I can't deal with the fake stuff. Eve is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She looks like the real deal, right? There's no BBL. I want Eve. But I've already been with all these other. That didn't happen. And I know you guys are going to say, well, that's because he was the first man. Right. But even after that, we don't read about Adam taking on other wives. Notice that, thank you, Ian. I'm just real dry and sarcastic. But notice that there was still this type of preserving of women's honor. And you might say, well, what about, Abraham and all these men that started having multiple wives? This was not God's order. This was not God's best. Yeshua even says this when he's confronted by the Pharisees, when they go, look, if I die, my wife is going to have to marry somebody, and then it might be my brother, and he died. So whose wife is she going to be in heaven? Dumb. And Yeshua says, listen, the only reason divorce was allowed is because of your hard-heartedness. I always intended that a man and a woman be together for life. But I had to protect these women because you guys were divorcing them because they messed up your matzo ball soup or your steak or whatever it was. And you're like, you're out of here. You can't cook. I'm going to marry another one. And these women who could not remarry, because it wasn't like the culture we have today where women could just, collect alimony and go spend it on the next boyfriend. But these women could not remarry. And so they end up basically on their own, maybe with their child, and there was no provision for them, right? You remember reading about Ruth, her husband died and she was just a widow. So she had to glean from other people's vineyards and from their land, right? So that was the welfare system at the time. But I mean, in these early days, you're talking about women struggling, not like how women try to lie and say they're struggling now. So imagine it was always intended for men to be pure and chaste as well, not according to the culture, according to the kingdom culture. Okay, now obviously that's not been my experience or most men's experience, right? Most of us have had premarital sex, and that's unfortunate. But I think going forward, we need to teach our children, boys and girls, that is not God's best for you. If you're a boy, you should not be taught that you should have sex with as many people as you want till you figure out who you want to be with. This is not a cow where you try out the milk first. All right. We're going to go to Eve now. Time to jump on the women. Cindy, Michela, you about to get it right now. I'm just kidding. So Eve, what's changed? What's remained? So Eve reflected God's glory through the man. Now Eve wants her own glory. And boy, does she. Black girl magic. Hey, women rule the world. What was that song by that demon Sasha Fierce? What was that song? If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. Well, if you like it, how does he know that he likes it? Was he trying it before he put a ring on it? Oh my God. Disgusting. She basically just co-signed on having sex and then getting married. Right. Eve was to help Adam tend the garden. But now Eve tended to the serpent, and she's still tending to the serpent. Eve today, right now, the new Michelle said, Black girl havoc. Yes. Don't you guys find it funny that a lot of hurricanes are named after women? I always laugh at that. There was one just recently named Karen. I'm not even gonna go there. I'm waiting for one named Keisha. I think they should name a storm named Keisha. There needs to be a black girl hurricane who does destruction and a white girl named Karen. I just think that needs to happen. Cindy said, why buy the cow when the milk is free? The milk is not only free, Cindy, it's spoiled, it's curdled, it's sour. Okay. Eve was to help Adam tend the garden. Eve tended to the serpent. So Eve tended to the serpent by listening to what the serpent promised her, as opposed to what God had already said she could have through being her husband's helpmate. She'd already been given her role and her calling and her position. And she said, you know what? That's not good enough. I want mine, right? My body, my choice. I don't have to do what a man says. A man can't tell me what to do. Keisha with a K. Yes, not with a Q. Yes, with a K. The ghetto Keisha. And all respect for girls named Keisha. My mom's middle name is Keisha. I'm about to talk bad about Keisha. I was about to say that milk would make you sick, literally. Girl, I'm telling you. GMO milk, Bill Gates milk. Everybody done had it. All right. So Eve is still listening to the serpent today. Don't you guys find that ironic? She's still eating from the tree of forbidden knowledge and she's still listening to the serpent. The serpent is saying, did God really say? Did God really say that? You won't die, Eve. You'll be fine without your husband. Listen to me. Your body is your body to do with whatever you. How dare a man try to tell you what to do? Adam is out of box. Adam, stay over there and watch her eat this fruit and then come listen to her. Because really, a woman knows. Black girl magic. More like black girl voodoo. All right. What's the next one? Eve, we're on well, I didn't number Eve's because it just corresponds to the next one. Okay. Eve was to co-rule and reign with Adam. What happens now? Eve desires to rule over Adam. We know that because Eve literally is like, here you go, honey. Here you go. Here's the fruit you told me I shouldn't eat or even touch or go near or breathe on or look at or wink at or no, stand, dance by, twerk on. I think Eve was twerking on that tree. Not literally, but figuratively. She was getting the trauma out of her soul. That's what she was doing. And so when she ate from the tree, she said, Satan, my new bridegroom, my new husband, my new master. That's basically what she said. And then she was like, Adam, you're so weak. Kevin said, Black Girl Tragic. Oh my God, yes. I need a t-shirt that says that. But I used to be able to fight, Kevin. I put my dukes up a long time ago. I'm a mom. I can't act like that anymore, but I'd probably have to fight. And that's okay. You know why? Because I have my real hair and I could just reach for the lace front and the eyelashes. It's over after that. Okay. Eve was to help Adam in his work by tending to the home and the children. Now, what does Eve want to do? Eve wants to be equal in every way to Adam. And the crazy thing is, the way God made us, it's like we're so by default made a certain way that when we try to operate outside of that, we still operate within it. So I'll give you an example. When someone claims they are trans something, right, transforming, more than meets the eye. When they're transforming, they end up becoming the other thing they say they feel they are in their mind. But at the same time, they do and say things that are still connected to who they were really made to be. You can't get away from it. You just can't. And women who try to lead, it's really interesting. I'm sure you guys have seen this. It'll go something like this. I'm going to play both parts. You guys ready? Anybody want to sign me to be an actress? Don't, because it's horrible. I feel like men need to protect women. There was a woman that got beat up the other day because she spit in a man's face. I don't care. I don't care what a woman does. She's a woman. No man should ever hit a woman. Where are the men? You guys are recording it with your phone. Where were the men? But I thought you said that you guys didn't want us to protect you and that you could open your own doors and you could make your own money and you pretty much, you got the bag, you make more than us. What are we even here for? What do you need us for? You're practically the man now. Oh, great. So you're going to throw that in my face? Wow. Small, you know what energy. Guess what? There are no real men anymore. I feel like men need to protect us, but since you're not going to protect us, you guys are weak. Beta. Right. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to step on your toes, miss. I don't want to, get in your way of making your bag and being your own defender. So I'm just going to kind of step over here and look for a woman who's feminine who will allow me to protect her. Right. So, you do you. Oh my God, I can't find a man. There's no good men out here. Let me put a video on cry. I can't find a man. I'm a good woman. I have a good heart. And this, my friends, is society today between men and women. Go on any YouTube video, and this is literally what you have. Why? Because women really do want to be protected. Women really do want to be cherished and loved. They are meant to be vulnerable and soft. And that doesn't mean weak, right? I'm not a weak woman. I'm highly opinionated, very well read, great conversationalist, if I say so myself, right? And good sense of humor. But my husband is the man. He is the man. And I like that. I like that I can depend on him for strength. Sometimes when he comes home and I've had a really rough day with the kids, and I'm just like, he'll hug me and I'll just kind of bury my face in his chest and go, this feels so good and safe. Sometimes I just need to feel safe and secure. It's just a wonderful feeling. I would not want to live without that. And I wouldn't want to try to emasculate him and then expect him to be a man. It's just awful. Women shoot themselves in the foot all the time. But men, I got to say, the list I just read previously is what created these conditions. Now, am I saying these women would have never existed? Of course not. We have biblical examples. We got Jezebel, we got Vashti. We've got all kinds of women who refused to yield and bow the knee. We have all these women that were living in lavish splendor and they tried to level their own men and control them. Okay. Ian says, right, I feel like this scenario happens too. Yes, it happens too often. But let me tell you something, men, the way you change it, Cindy said, you describing me. The way you change it in your neck of the woods is you just don't yield to that foolishness. And don't be afraid to be called toxic. Please give me more toxic masculinity. I'll take it. Please, we need you guys to kind of be the pillars of society again. I like it. Okay. And most women do. They just won't admit it. And this is why they're, all by themselves and miserable. And they hate women like me because I actually stick up for men. And I refuse to espouse their feminist tropes because they're destroying our society and our communities with their nonsense. And they don't realize that feminism came from a man, just FYI, and so did the sexual revolution. So they're following men, even if they claim they're not. All right, let's continue. We stopped that Eve was to help Adam in his work, but she wants to be equal in every way to Adam. Yes, she does. Eve was made to be a helper, but Eve rejects Adam's leadership. So you can't be a helper to someone who you reject. We just kind of made fun of that in a little skit, right? You can't reject Adam's leadership. You can't reject his leadership and then claim you don't get to be a helper, right? I'll give you an example of this in real time. You guys remember the B-list actress who I only know for one or two movies, Keke Palmer. I always want to call her Kiki Shepard for some reason, but that's not her. Keke Palmer. She got pregnant by a guy, didn't demand that he marry her or say, I'm not going to be with you unless you marry me. Okay. And got pregnant. And what did she do? She claimed she had postpartum and she went to an Usher concert, right? And at this Usher concert, she had a dress on that had all her cheeks out. And then she was dancing on video. You could see that she was dancing on Usher. Okay. And the internet came for her, but it more came for the boyfriend. And I'm going to say boyfriend because he was not her husband. What did the interweb say? The interweb said she has postpartum depression. She should be allowed to, feel good and go out. She just had a baby. Now, at this point, I think the baby wasn't even a whole 8-9 months yet. I could be off by a couple months, but it was a young child. And then she was bragging about how she got all this booty and this shape from having the baby. But for some reason, she wanted the world to see this and not just leave it for her baby's father. The boyfriend was irate and said, here I am trying to protect the mother of my child and guard my privacy and want to be respected. And I'm being told that, well, even if she is a mother, she has a right to express herself and live her best life. And Keke came out and made t-shirts called I'm a Mother to mock him. Okay. Then she has this thing coming out. I don't know if she already did it, where it's like this concert or something that she's doing with Usher. But she capitalized on this. She made t-shirts and all kind of merch mocking this man. This is what Black women were saying to me because I did a space on it in Twitter. Black women were telling me, primarily Black women, telling me that if he wanted, listen to this mindset, if he wanted to be able to tell her what to do, he should have married her. Don't get her pregnant and think that somehow gives him the right to tell her what to do. Now they're right. They're right in this one regard. You didn't decide that she was the woman that you would be in covenant with. So you're just a boyfriend. You're just a baby's daddy. So technically they're right. But I'm more addressing the mindset that she got pregnant by him willingly. I don't think she was held hostage, right? If she really wanted to be a mother and a wife, she could have made that clear. So they were equally wrong, but they were all making this type of argument for the woman and coming against the man saying, oh, he was out of box because he did this publicly. She wore her cheeks out publicly. I don't understand. Ian said, That woman, Jada Smith, too. A lot of women were defending her after she openly said she cheated. Yeah. But see, I blame Will again, right? Will. Her entanglement happened under his watch. And to be fair, I think it was a known thing that they were open in their relationship, okay? Because I've heard them discuss this before. But he's a weak man because he was in an open relationship to begin with. He allowed Jada to do what she did, and she's disgusting and trifling because she had sex with her son's friend. It's horrible. And she said it so cavalierly. It was an entanglement. Weak men make evil women. This is what I talked about in the Bible study, right? You don't have a Jezebel without an Ahab. Not that Jezebel doesn't exist, but Jezebel can't kill the priest. Jezebel can't bring in Baal worship. Jezebel can't do any of these things. All right. And the murder of babies. If you go read about Jezebel in the Phoenician rituals of murdering children, presently they have still found in urns the remains of young infants and babies. And this was under her watch because the Phoenicians from Sidonia believed in the worship of sex ritual magic for what do you call it, for the blessing of the land, right, the fertility of the land. And so sometimes poor people would even buy other people's children to cast them into these holes, basically, where they burn them to death. This is awful. So you don't really have a powerful Jezebel, let me say that, that's ruling the land with Ahab sucking his thumb looking at OnlyFans. You don't have that. And yes, there was OnlyFans during Ahab. Dare you to prove me wrong. All right. Where are we at now? Okay. Eve was to be a godly influence over Adam, but Eve wants to be a dominant, ungodly influence over Adam. See, women are made to influence men. We're not made to control men. We're meant to be effective, not not an infection. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. I think so. We're not supposed to infect our men. We're supposed to affect them in a positive, godly way, right? So, as I mentioned earlier, if my husband is making a decision, I don't always agree with everything my husband does. I'm an individual. I have my own mind and way that I think things should go. But what I typically will say is, well, might I make a suggestion? He'll say yes, and I'll make the suggestion, and then I'll always preface it with this: whatever you decide, though, that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to back you. I tell him that every time because in the early part of our marriage, I used to come against everything he did, and I always had my own ideas, and I'm like, well, what about this? And then if he didn't want to do that, I'd get upset and it'd be a whole row. Now, even if I don't agree, I always tell him, but I trust your leadership. Like I do. My husband makes awesome decisions. He will belabor and meditate and think. It drives me a little crazy because, I don't take as long to think these things through. But let me just tell you, when he does think these things through, it always comes out right every single time. And even if there's some mishap along the way, he pre-thinking and planning and kind of like pausing for a moment because he's not impulsive at all, which I'm grateful for. He ends up making some of the best decisions and things that I would have never thought of. So, I mean, he's an awesome man of God and an awesome leader. And I love that he does take his time to really try to make the best decision with the information he has. Women today don't really appreciate that in men. They always think everything about them is better, and they'll espouse all of these great things about women. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if you guys were so great, men would want to be with you. I mean, how are you great and lonely? How are you great on OnlyFans? I mean, if you're doing OnlyFans, that doesn't look like. I know they say that they're happy, but women taking off their clothes in front of a camera sounds really sad and lonely. It sounds like a broken person, right? When I was in a strip club, I wasn't happy. I was miserable. I had to pretend to be happy because you're performing. But no woman doing that is content and happy. No woman putting herself in a vulnerable position like that for men to gawk at her is pleased with herself. No woman wants that for their life. In fact, most women start thinking, wow, because I was 16 at the time. Most women start thinking, man, how long am I going to be doing this? Am I ever going to get married? Right? Like, it's just sad. It's really, truly sad. And what I was doing then was still like, it was still seen as shameful. Like you didn't want everybody to know you did that. Now these women are like, they're bragging on this and they're being celebrated for it. That's the worst part. Never in my 50 years did I think I would see women being celebrated for reprobate behavior. And as a woman, when I speak against it, other women come for me. Oh, yeah. I've never once had a man jump in my DMs and call me ugly and old ever. You know who calls me ugly and old? Other women. And I'm like, It's a good thing I'm not vain. It's a good thing I don't care about that kind of stuff. They can't hurt me with that kind of stuff. I don't care because I'm thinking to myself, what is that that line in Color Purple? I may be old and I may be right. I'm like, okay, but I'm married though. Get where I'm at. Clearly, my husband likes it. I'm married with children and I'm happy. You're not. So you might be fine as wine, but the only people that get to see it are the men that you charge. I don't know. I don't want to swap places with you, sister. Black girl tragic. All right, Kevin, I want a shirt. I'm not even playing. I want a shirt. All right. Last two. Eve was to be the giver of life. What is Eve doing now? She is the destroyer of life. And I don't just mean through abortion, y'all. I mean, Eve, let's say a woman doesn't even want to have children. Women now, you wouldn't want them around your children. Okay. And that means like women in your family, some of your friends, like some of the people you know, young women. Let's say, and let me not even say young, because I saw an old woman that was old enough to be my mama, and she was playing like some old blues music. You guys probably seen her. She goes toward the camera and cuts the music on, and then she backs up from the camera and she's showing her cheeks twerking. And I'm like, what am I looking at? Jesus, I know you got more people you want to save, but just please come soon. Last one. Eve was to be under the covering and protection of Adam. Now Eve prefers the covering of Satan and is not protected. Satan is not a protector or a guardian. He is a destroyer of lives. He is a sifter of souls, right? And Eve has put herself in a position where she's lamenting. She doesn't have the covering, yet she keeps on trying to destroy the covering. Yes, he's coming with the sword. And God help us. I pray that those of us who know better and do better teach others the same, because that sword is double-edged and it's not a joke. All right. So you guys have the scriptures that I'm looking at. This is going back to the Twitter space that we had. Let me see. I'm looking at some of the comments. Usher made a music video and had her in it. Oh God. Okay, that must be what they were talking about doing, because I knew I saw like some promotion or whatever. Let me see. Cindy said, and they were mentoring other couples. Yeah, I mean, forget them. How stupid were the couples? Like, I mean, were you just that like far up their butts that you were like, ooh, Jada and Will, there's relationship goals. No, look at their kids. They're not relationship goals. Let's see. That figure is disgusting. Yep, it is disgusting. You guys, my allergies are all of a sudden kicking up, and I don't even have allergies. Bill Gates, spraying the sky. He's coming with the sword. Cindy said, my daily prayer. Okay. Did I miss any at the top before I go to the scriptures? I'm trying to see. Trying to see if we have any. All right. I think that was it. Okay, so I'm going to the passage. Genesis 3, 1 through 22. How we got here, right? We're going to just double back, and then we're going to close the stream out. Genesis 3, 1 through 22. The serpent, craftier, subtle, and more skilled in deceit than any creature of the field. Funny, that's how Eve behaves now, right? The Lord God had made, said to the woman, and listen to these words, can it really be that you should not eat from any tree of the garden? Let's use our modern vernacular. Can it really be that you can't murder your own child? I mean, is it even a child? It's just a parasite. You're a host for a parasite. It's feeding off your body. He doesn't have the right to stay there. Do you really have to stay married if your husband isn't pleasing you anymore and you just fell out of love? Can't you just find some younger, newer model who gets you? And on and on and on it goes. So he's questioning the word of God. He's undermining it. And the woman, obviously, who knows better, says, well, we can't eat from that tree, right? We can have every other tree, but we can't eat of that one. I'm not supposed to even touch it. So remember, I mentioned that her saying you can't touch it is not a lie. It's not that Adam lied or added anything to the word. What he did was he added a guard, a protective guard, kind of like, if your child goes to eat something off the counter, like I used to bake all the time, and I would say, don't touch those cookies till they cool. Don't even go near them because you're going to be tempted, right? That's kind of what Adam did. So in his conversation with her, imagine, he's hugged up with his wife, and, they're looking at all the animals and the beauty of the garden. And he's like, Eve, God told me that we're not supposed to eat of that tree. You see that tree over there? That's the forbidden tree. Why? Well, God said that it's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And if we ate of it, and he told me this before he made you, that we would die. We would surely die. So don't you eat of that tree. Eve, don't even touch it. Okay. So imagine he's actually guarding her. He's protecting her by putting an extra guardrail. Okay. And then what does she do? She listens to Hasatan, who says, "You're not gonna die. You won't surely die. For God knows that on the day that you," and so listen, God knows. So he's bringing God into this as though God is in agreement. God knows that when you eat of it, you'll just be like him. You'll be knowledgeable. You'll know good and evil. And what does that mean exactly? It actually means your eyes will be opened. You'll have greater awareness than you have now, and you'll be like God, knowing the difference between good and evil. Now, I find that interesting, don't you? Because she didn't even know what evil was. She was innocent. Why would she need to know the distinction between good, which is God, and she knew God was good, and she saw everything that God made, and her husband taught her the things that God made and the words that God gave him, so she would know what good was. Why would she need to know evil as an option? Why would she need to know the difference between good and evil? Well, what Satan didn't tell her was she would know the difference between good and evil. She would consider good and evil being intermingled. That's what that tree of knowledge of good and evil means. It means that there can be a mixture. There can be a harmonious mixture. If you see the outcome of our society now, don't we have that? We have harmonious, it's not harmonious, but we're told there can be a harmony between LGBT and straight people via marriage because they just want to be married. We can accept that, right? I mean, marriage is great. What they forget to tell you is they never supported marriage before because it was considered a biblical thing. Now they want that. Now they also want to adopt children. They don't want to have children, right, with just, the opposite sex. They want to take your children and adopt them. So there's this meshing. We're taking the things that God made and we're making them perverted because Satan can't make anything. Satan can't produce anything on his own. He's not a creator, he's a destroyer. So he takes what God makes and he perverts it. That's why there is no singular idea of Satan's. There's just carbon copy. Even go right. Every single thing he does and says, a perverted twist and copy of what Yeshua did when he was on earth, because he doesn't have any new ideas. And this is why women who ultimately reject men become like men. You're going to become the thing that you claim you hate. You become over masculine, almost to a fault. The very toxic masculinity you claim you didn't want, guess what? Now you are toxic and you're still a woman, but you're trying to be masculine and you can't because you don't know what that is. Men were little boys who had become men. It was always in them to be men. It was never in you to be a man. So it's unfortunate they become the thing they hate. And I believe that's a judgment of God, honestly. And the same thing when the roles are reversed when men try to be effeminate. They want to be like women and they claim they hate women or they don't care for women, but they become the thing they claim they're not attracted to. It's just the most oddest thing. Let me see. So Satan lied to her and said that she would be like God. And then it says here, after she listened to this deception, notice it goes on to say, the woman then saw that the tree was good for food. So this is kind of, Satan doesn't have any new tricks in his bag. What does he do when he is tempting Yeshua? He tempts Yeshua to turn a stone into breads. What does that represent? Don't get caught up and hung up in just the literal text. It has deeper implications. The deeper implications are that he always tries to get us to submit to our impulses. And here's the crazy thing about that. Satan knows that the impulses are, or I should say the desires are not evil in themselves. Is it wrong to want to eat? No, Jesus had been fasting. Is it wrong to want to have sex? No, God made us sexual beings, right? He gave us desires toward that end, but within the confines of marriage, there are boundaries. All the freedom God gives has boundaries. That's what makes it freedom. Freedom without boundaries is bondage. And so basically, Eve began to look at the fruit and she saw something different. Just a few verses before, she said, we're not to eat the tree that's forbidden. We're not even to touch it. But then after Satan basically speaks to her lower nature, right? The thing that she already desired to do, she yields to that. And the first thing she did, notice the sin started in the mind, just like Yeshua said. It is said, do not commit adultery. Okay, that's the act. But what does Jesus say? He strengthens the law by saying, but I say, do not even look at a woman with adultery, right? Because I mean, do not even look at a woman with lust in your heart, because then you're committing adultery with her. You're committing adultery with her. Now we know that the thought is not the act. What Jesus is conveying is that the sin starts in your mind first before it ever takes place physically. You're meditating on that thing. You're twisted in your mind that it's not that bad. It's okay. Maybe it's not as bad as they say. Maybe it's not what God called it. We're living in a new day. Maybe it's something else altogether. Maybe we can redefine it. We can call it by something else so it won't be so bad. If you have to play those mental gymnastics, you already know you're in trouble. Okay? God wants me to be happy. That's the one I've heard before. Because, we all know God lives for our happiness. Sure. And then it says, after she saw it was good for food, so she's lying to herself, saying, well, it's like all the other fruit on the trees, right? It's edible. It's good to eat. So what's wrong with that? And then it says, it was delightful to look at. Well, it's beautiful. Truly, if it's beautiful, God must want me to have it. Why wouldn't he want me to eat something that's going to sustain me in my hunger and also beautiful to look at? I mean, didn't God give us all these things to appreciate and enjoy? Don't we do the same thing? I heard a man say one time, if God didn't want men to have sex with women, or no, if God wanted men to be with one woman, he wouldn't make women so beautiful. I'm like, oh my God, what did you like? Did you learn that in daycare or preschool? It's not even deep. It's so stupid. Like, try harder, come up with something better than that. All right. And then the last one, which is the most important, she saw that the tree, was desired because it could make one wise and insightful. And this is called sophistry. It's gnosis, right? We all like knowledge. We all want to pursue knowledge. But here's the problem. Pursuing knowledge just for the sake of knowledge is usually because of hubris. It's usually pride that leads us to do that, because we're like, oh, I could share this and that'll be impressive. And people will be so in awe of me, right? I could match wits with the best of them. Women do that now, wanting to be equal with men. But the type of knowledge we're supposed to pursue is so that we can apply what we've learned and it become wisdom. And then the Bible says about this, wisdom is shown right by what it does. Not what it knows, what it does. Wisdom is, I've learned lessons in life that cause me to make better choices so that people can go, wow, that's really, really awesome that you do that now, knowing you used to do this over here before. You've changed the way that you think. Yes, the renewing of the mind should ultimately be carried out in the body. I can't see what you know unless you're doing it. I can't see what you believe unless you do it. But for some reason, people seem to think that, knowledge is private or esoteric or secret. And, we have it like in this little closet, store it up so we can be all puffed up. And that's not, no. I don't care about your PhD or your BLE or your EBD. I don't care. CBD oil. I don't care about none of them letters behind your name. Because if you're stupid and you make stupid choices, your education clearly isn't effective. All right. And so after she took of the fruit, it says, and ate it, she also gave some to her husband with her, and he ate. So this is just my theory. Adam is standing there in the garden because clearly he was within arm's reach for her to give him the fruit. So he's watching all of this, right? And I think when he was told he would die, he'd never seen anyone die. He didn't even really know what death was, I don't believe. And then he watches her and he's like, let me see. Nope, she didn't die. Okay, I'll take a bite. That's what I think happened. Because why would he stand there and watch this interaction between she and the enemy and not be like, do the Batman slap?